Welcome, tech enthusiasts and AI aficionados, to another mind-bending episode of Mapping the AI Frontier. I'm your host, Mark, and as always, I'm joined by the Wardley to my map, Tom.
Thanks, Mark. I must say, your introductions are evolving faster than GPT models. Soon, you might even pass the Turing test.
Ha ha ha. Well, today we're diving deep into the world of GenAI startups and how they can use Wardley Mapping for strategic planning and pivots. It's like Inception meets the social network, but with more AI and fewer lawsuits. So Tom, imagine you're the CEO of a hot new GenAI startup. You've got more data than Facebook, more ambition than Elon Musk, and more coffee in your system than a Starbucks during finals week. How do you navigate this crazy AI landscape?
Well, Mark, that's where Wardley Mapping comes in. It's like having a GPS for your startup, but instead of avoiding traffic jams, you're avoiding obsolescence and missed opportunities.
Exactly. And let's be honest, in the world of GenAI, obsolescence comes at you faster than a Tesla in ludicrous mode. So what's the first step in using Wardley Maps for strategic planning?
The first step is to map out your current position. It's like taking a selfie of your startup, but instead of duck faces, you're showing off your value chain.
Ah, the startup selfie. And I bet it reveals more than just your best angle, right?
You bet. It reveals hidden dependencies, potential bottlenecks, and opportunities you might have missed while you were busy perfecting your pitch deck.
Speaking of pitch decks, I once saw a startup try to explain their AI strategy using interpretive dance. Spoiler alert, it didn't go well.
Oh, the horrors of startup pitches. But with Wardley Mapping, you can communicate your strategy clearly across the organization. It's like having a universal translator for your business plan.
A universal translator? So it can even help the marketing team understand what the dev team is saying?
Let's not get carried away, Mark. Some things are beyond even the power of Wardley Mapping.
All right, Tom, let's talk about everyone's favorite startup activity, pivoting. It's like yoga for businesses, but with more sweating and panic.
Ah, yes. The noble art of realizing your initial idea was terrible and quickly pretending you meant to do something else all along.
I see you've attended the Startup Founders School of Spin, but seriously, how can Wardley Mapping help with pivots?
Well, Mark, Wardley Maps are like a crystal ball for your business. They help you identify triggers for pivots, like market shifts or technological breakthroughs. It's like having a startup spidey sense.
With great power comes great pivotability?
Exactly. And the best part is, you can assess the impact of potential pivots on your value chain before you make the leap. It's like having a simulation of your startup's future, minus the DeLorean and flux capacitor.
Great Scott, that sounds incredibly useful. But how often should startups be updating their Wardley Maps? I mean, the Gen AI landscape changes faster than my Netflix recommendations.
Good question, Mark. Wardley Mapping isn't a one-and-done deal. It's more like brushing your teeth. You should do it regularly, or things start to get ugly.
Ah, so it's not just map it and forget it. It's more like map it, check it, update it, pivot it, bop it.
I'm not sure Wardley would approve of that last part, but you've got the right idea. Regular mapping sessions should be part of your strategic planning cycles. It's like giving your startup a regular checkup, but instead of a doctor, you've got a map.
All right, Tom, it's time for everyone's favorite segment, decoding the Wardley Map. It's like national treasure, but instead of stealing the Declaration of Independence, we're borrowing strategic insights.
Right you are, Mark, and today's map is a real beauty. It's like looking at the DNA of a GenAI startup. Let's start at the top, shall we?
Absolutely. I see strategic planning and pivot execution sitting pretty at the top. They're like the cool kids of the startup world, aren't they?
Indeed they are, Mark. And notice how they're positioned in the custom-built column? That's because every startup strategy and pivot approach needs to be tailored to their unique situation. It's like getting a bespoke suit, but for your business model.
Ooh, fancy. And look at Wardley Mapping sitting there in the middle. It's like the Swiss Army knife of startup tools, isn't it?
Spot on, Mark. Wardley Mapping is the linchpin that connects everything. It's providing insights for strategic planning, informing pivot decisions, and even helping with stakeholder alignment. It's working harder than a caffeinated squirrel.
Speaking of working hard, I can't help but notice execution and stakeholder alignment are a bit further down the map. Is that cause for concern?
Good eye, Mark. This suggests that while the startup has strong planning and mapping capabilities, they might need to focus more on turning those plans into action and getting everyone on board. It's like having a fantastic recipe, but forgetting to turn on the oven.
Ah, the classic all map, no action syndrome. And what about adaptability hanging out on the left side there?
That's another area for improvement. In the fast-paced world of GenAI, adaptability is key. It's like being in a game of AI Quidditch. You need to be ready to change direction at a moment's notice.
AI Quidditch? Now that's a startup idea. But jokes aside, it seems like this map is telling quite a story about our hypothetical startup.
It sure is, Mark. The startup has laid a strong foundation with its strategic planning and Wardley mapping skills. Now, they need to focus on execution, alignment, and adaptability to really soar. It's like they've built a fantastic AI-powered rocket. And now, they just need to make sure everyone's strapped in and ready for takeoff.
Well, folks, we've navigated the treacherous waters of strategic planning and pivoting in the world of GenAI startups. Remember, Wardley Mapping isn't just a tool, it's a superpower. Use it wisely, and maybe one day you'll be the Tony Stark of the AI world. Minus the whole creating an evil AI that tries to destroy the world thing.
Absolutely, Mark. And let's not forget, the true value of Wardley Mapping lies not just in the maps themselves, but in the discussions and insights they generate. It's like a couples therapy session for your startup team, but with more arrows and less crying. Hopefully.
Wise words, Tom. And on that note, dear listeners, it's time for us to pivot away from this episode. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review faster than a GenAI startup pivots its business model. Until next time, keep mapping and may your pivots be ever in your favor.